Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Life Size Voices. My name is Umar Faruqi, and I am the founder of Life Size Publishing. Today, we have a very special guest with us. She just published her book, Shifting the Spotlight, and I'm so excited. Not for her, for myself, because I love the book. And she is a former Olympian. Now she is a Hall of Fame athlete. She coaches teams, and she is an international keynote speaker, none other than Pamela Dukes. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, good to see you. Glad to be here.
Thanks. And so Pamela and I have been working now. She's been working with our team at Life Size for a couple of months. She has a
Mhm.
fantastic book, amazing story. I actually reached out to her from a cold LinkedIn message and it turned into a full-blown book. So I'm really excited for that as well. But so the way we do this, Pam, is it's really punchy. I feel like lots of podcasts have a lot of fluff and people don't really have that much time anymore. So I'm just going to go
Mhm.
straight into the questions if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Perfect. So the first thing we have is called the spark. And the spark is what inspired you to write this book? And was there a defining moment or personal experience that kind of lit that fuse?
Sure. Well, I remember when I retired from track, I had been an athlete since I think third grade. And I remember it was really hard for me because I'd always had sports and this other thing, whether it's full-time job or whatever. And part of me just disappeared. It was gone. And I felt kind of hollow. And I wasn't quite sure what to do about it. I think there was a sadness, there was just a somebody help me kind of feeling. And I realized back then there weren't a lot of resources for athletes. And so one of the reasons I wrote the book is I wanted to show how I had to make that major pivot and hopefully help others because everyone's got to make a pivot sometimes. Sometimes you're in a job that disappears and it's not big in the field anymore. You got to go do something else. So there's many kinds of pivots that people take, but I wanted to maybe offer some of the steps that I took to hopefully figure out what I was going to do and then eventually get to where I understood myself better, as well as what I wanted to do in my profession.
That's amazing. And because I've read a bit of the book, there's so many different lessons from your life and from the experiences you've had. And obviously, the huge pivot that you had to make from being an athlete, that was essentially what your life revolved around. And then losing
Mhm.
that and having to build your life from the ground up. And there's this
Right.
quote. It's in the first chapter, but it's "Pressure is a privilege" by I think it's Billie Jean King.
Billie Jean
And I've
King.
been
Yeah.
throwing that around for the past week since I read your book, and people have been like, "Yo, you know what? That makes a lot of sense." But it actually brings me to my second question, and we call it the
Okay.
takeaway. What's the
Mhm.
one key idea or lesson you hope readers take from your book?
If I had to sum it down to two words, it would be get help. Because now we have so many things at our fingertips. You can get counseling, you can get coaching, you can get professional coaching, you can get therapy. And I feel, there are people out there who are just trying to do it on their own. They're trying to kind of white knuckle it and get through it, and I'll be okay eventually. And you don't really have to do that anymore. There are, like I said, areas and people who can help you figure out what you want to be. There's so many professional career coaching, career counseling, where you can go and they can help you figure out where your skills are, what you're good at. You can maybe look at different professions and figure out, what's the right thing for you. And there's so much work that's been done now. It's just easy to take advantage of it, but you have to recognize that you might need help and actually raise your hand to get help. So I think the most important point there is you have to realize that nobody gets anywhere alone. There are people there, there's support system, and you just have to be willing to admit that you need a little help, and you'd be surprised what it can do and how much it could help you.
That's amazing. And I think in the book, you actually dive into understanding what your strengths are. And I'm sure over the span of your career, you've realized that there are certain things that you're really good at and certain things that you're not necessarily good at, and you can delegate or outsource to other individuals' resources. Do you think that's something that being a former professional athlete, you learned a lot of those fundamentals from when you were actively an athlete and working with the team? And do you think that sort of seeped into the work you do right now in your company?
I do, but I also think it was partly due to my parents and their upbringing. They always treated us as, I won't say adults, but as grown people. And they made sure that we understood the importance of responsibility and integrity and doing what you say you're going to do. And of course, the most important thing was doing well in school, because
Hmm.
as I like to tell my son, mommy has a job, so she goes to work every day. Your job is school. You get up, you go to school, and you are working, and you will come home. You don't get a paycheck, but you get an education. And at some point, you're going to flip that and actually get a job using that education. So it's the same thing. And I need you to take it seriously. There'll be kids in the class joking around, and you won't care about your grades. And it's like, it all counts now. It starts today. We practiced up until high school. We're in high school now. Everything counts. And I tell him that because I want him to be prepared so that, when he gets out there in the world, he's already used to having a level of pressure and understanding, where he needs to study and do better. And he can self correct, because I know I won't always be there.
Yep. And I think that's so relevant for the youth nowadays as well, because I feel like when you go through school and you get your undergrad degree, maybe you do your master's, there's this sense of entitlement. And once you go out into the real world, you're like, wait a minute. I thought I was owed a job. I thought I was owed a nice 9 to 5 and comfortable life. But the reality is so different, and it's becoming harder and harder. And I feel like
Mhm.
now that the whole dynamic of the world is changing with technology and how things are progressing so fast, it's important that one, we learn from stories like yours, and then two, for the youth, it's important that they realize that the work they're doing now
Mhm.
is the work that's actually going to matter in the long run, because the decisions I make now are going to be for the
Right.
better in my future. So that makes a lot of sense. So the last question we have is called the mission, and it's, how does this book fit into your bigger mission for the or vision for the future?
Well, I'm a people person and I'm an optimist. So those are good combinations. So I really like to help people, to make them feel better, to help them perhaps find a different way of doing things that is easier for them. I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned from my technology group is that you have to figure out what your value is, and you have to maximize that. And if your value isn't useful to anybody anymore, well, then they no longer may feel like they need to have you in their services. So for me, it's really important that you get strong and clear on what you provide, what you can do, but you also have to step out of the box a little bit. When I first started working, I was very tactical. So I would take the job description and I would put it in a spreadsheet, and then I would write all the things, and every week I would cross off that I did these things. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm slaying. There's no way they're going to get rid of me. But then I realized, like, that's sort of level one. And most times, your job description is more of a suggestion of what they want, but they can't put everything down on a job description. So you have to figure out what else is needed. You have to take initiative. You have to raise your hand for assignments. I've learned to ask my boss if I can help him or her, because not everybody does that. And, it's a lot of pressure being in those positions. So I try to relieve some of that. And the biggest thing you also have to do is you have to anticipate. So you have to sort of see around the corner to see what's coming, and then figure out what that is and help the team. But if you're just checking off boxes on your job description, you're not going to get there. So you have to learn how to grow and adapt these skills so that you become such an asset that when they figure out they have to do a reduction in force or a layoff, hopefully they're saying, Pam, oh yeah, we can't get rid of Pam. She does like 4 different things that we didn't even ask her to do. So I think when you have that mindset of what else can I do to contribute? How can I help the team? How can I help others? I think at some point it's recognized, it's seen, and then hopefully it'll help you in your career.
Interesting. And do you think that it's important to get uncomfortable to grow in your career or as a person?
Oh yeah. I think everyone has those voices in their head. I think I did a post on LinkedIn where
You
I call
said
them
gremlins.
gremlins, like
Yes.
Brene Brown, and they show up right when you're trying to do something big. So I remember there was the post I did where I was announcing my book, and I was excited about it, but the gremlins were saying it's not that big a deal. It's not that big of a book. And so I heard them say, well, it's not exactly War and Peace, which I found out is 1,200 pages, and it won like an Emmy, an Academy Award, and all these other things. But see, that those voices are trying to bring you down any way they can. And so instead of me thinking, wow, I wrote a book, this is great, it's my first book, I'm going to write more, I was trying to find a way to minimize it. So, yes, you have to find a way to do something hard. You have to have people around you who surround you and will push you and say you're doing great and encourage you so that you actually take that next step. Because it's very comfortable back here not writing the book and just kind of sitting back and watching others thrive. And, I want to be the person out there thriving and doing things that I didn't even know or think that I could do. And I think that's important for me.
I love that. And bonus question, I'm going to sneak one more in, but what do you think your life philosophy is? If there was a billboard, what would you put on it?
I wrote down the quote. Am I allowed to read it?
Sure.
I think I left it in my book, but Terry Jennings Walsh is a three-time gold medalist in beach volleyball. And I remember I read this on the internet and I thought, this is me. This is my whole persona. And the quote is, I don't want to be better than you or her or him. I want to be better than I am right now. And I think that's important because people think you're in competition with each other and at work and there are all these things. And for me, I'm not thinking what everyone else is doing. I'm just looking at me. I just want to get better. And if you do that, you will find a way to find more things to push yourself and achieve it. But when I heard that quote, I said, oh, it's me versus me. Let's go. And I think Kobe Bryant used to say some things like that. Several athletes had that kind of mindset. So that's one of my favorites.
That's amazing. And it's comparison is the thief of joy, as they say. And it's really when we compare ourselves to other people, they're in completely different situations. They have different environments, they have different obligations, and they're obviously thinking of things very differently than you are. And it's so important to just be 1% better. Like from Atomic Habits, one of my favorite books, it's just
Yes,
about being 1% better every day. And when you
absolutely.
do that and you follow the philosophy you just, or like the quote you just mentioned, I think you can just overall, every year, you develop into a new person. And
Yeah,
there's nothing better than that. So, Pam, thank you
agreed.
so much for making the time. And your book is amazing. You can find it on Amazon, Shifting the Spotlight. Pam is a fantastic person. I hope to see her live at some speaking event very soon. But you also have a website, pamsreflections.com, and you can go visit the website. You speak about different things, different topics, and obviously you have more information about the book. So I'd advise everybody to please visit her website. And again, thank you so much. I wish you the best of luck, and I really hope to see the book becoming a several time bestseller.
Thank you. And I appreciate all your help and support. I know I wouldn't be where I am now without you finding me. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thanks so much.